Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Lean Jack's Lean Leadership Series podcast. I'm your host, Executive Director of Lean Jack's, James Bussell, and I'm here with my good friend, Alan Parsley, and we're very excited to kick this off and have a very engaging conversation that I think you'll enjoy. So just a little bit about Alan's company right now. As you can see with the logo, Parsley Consultants. Alan is the President of Parsley Consultants, and they're a provider of comprehensive business transformation leadership, including business process improvement, leadership development, and strategic architecture development. And Alan and I have known each other for a long time, and there's no coincidence that he's the first guest as we do this new experiment, and excited to dive in. And the topic today is going to be Alan's experience with the Toyota production system. And so without further ado, let's just kick it off. And Alan, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And very much been looking forward to this for a while.
Yep. So. Yeah, actually, me too. I've been familiar with and have been a partner with in some cases, and was on the board of Lean Jack's back several years ago. So I'm excited too, because I believe in what our company does, and I think Lean Jack's and what Lean Jack's does for the community is awesome, and it's a great opportunity for companies to take advantage of an organization that really can come in and help you get fresh eyes and things like that. So yes, I do appreciate it. So, and
that's with the whole First Coast community. There's a lot of people with so much experience with this,
yep.
And to whereas we can help leverage that for you and for your company. So anyway, thanks for the kind words on that, and very excited, and I know of the work that you do, and I'm looking forward to you telling everybody about that. So just to get started, because we wanted to talk about the Toyota production system, well, why don't you talk about your origin story?
Okay. Well, it seemed like about 100 years ago that I started with Toyota. It wasn't quite that long ago, but it was back in 1989, and I started with Toyota actually on the production line. I was the guy that put the bumpers on the cars. So, which it was a great thing at that time. I was young. I was looking for a good company and some identity. So it was an awesome opportunity. What I didn't realize is what it was going to lead to later in my career, and what an opportunity, and what a great company to work for. Both from like how you treat people concept, and also how you do your work and how you do your business. Like I said, I started out putting bumpers on cars, and at that time, this was a big deal for Toyota, because it was the first wholly owned Toyota plant outside of Japan. So we were a little bit of an experiment at that time. So there was a lot of risks, and so they put a lot of energy and effort into making sure we got a good, healthy start. And that included a lot of training, a lot of hands-on training. At one point, I think we had like 400, trainers or coordinators that were on the shop floor, in the offices, wherever we were trying to learn how to do this thing called Toyota production system, which was huge at that time, and it's even grown more since then. So they were teaching us, what I took. I wasn't learning the Toyota production system. I was learning how to do my job.
Yeah.
And when I tell you it was, and anybody that started with Toyota back then would tell you, it was very hands-on. Like literally Japanese coordinators and trainers, they would adjust your arm and say, no, this way, Alan's on. So, it was very hands-on, but it was great. And we were learning this bigger idea of the Toyota production system, although we thought we were just learning to do this process, learning how to put these bumpers on right. Mm-hmm. But what a great experience. And as I progressed through Toyota, and spent some time as a team member, then spent some time as a team leader, spent some time as a group leader, assistant manager, and actually Mike Ozeas, who wrote the Toyota Way Culture book, he was in manufacturing with me out there. He was a few levels above as I was putting on these bumpers, but but very hands-on also. Mm-hmm. And he and I had the opportunity at about the same time to go from manufacturing to human resources. And I remember Mike talking about the fact that, what do you mean human resources? I don't have any background in human resources. I don't have anything that, I didn't go to college for human resources. So what do you expect me to do? And I remember the big story that Mike's told over and over, and I've heard, is that they looked at him and said, well, Mike, you've been successful in manufacturing. What led to your success? And of course, Mike knew the answer that was coming. It's identification of standards, identification of gaps, and problem solving and treating people the right way. So continuous improvement, essentially, and respect for people. So they said, well, that's what you do in HR. And from there, Mike made tremendous improvements in HR. I hope I was a part of helping in that as well as I started, because I had some experience in operations as a staffing coordinator and things like that, but no real HR background. So, but I learned and they taught, and I made mistakes and I corrected them, and ended up going to the Toyota's corporate manufacturing headquarters in Erlanger, Kentucky, and spent the last 4 or 5 years of my career there. So great progression. It was awesome experience that I'm still benefiting from today. I'm still learning. And, I talked about the Toyota production system. We started with the Toyota production system, and it quickly turned into the Toyota way. We realized it's bigger than just a production system, and it's more of a system of good operation of a company. Yeah. And it includes more of that respect for people and creating systems around both production and how you treat people right. So, again, great experience and one that I'm benefiting from now, but am eternally grateful for. So
that's amazing. And to where something that I've been doing the last few years is trying to meet and talk and be a sponge for anyone that had experience working firsthand with Toyota. And to me, because no matter what industry you're in, or if you're trying to improve your systems and processes and your culture, to whereas the Toyota production system and then what was adapted into lean thinking applies everywhere. To whereas, and that's something to whereas even with transactional processes, I like showing manufacturing examples, showing the actual Toyota examples, because it's easier for people to see. Yep. To whereas it's tangible. So Alan, you mentioned that you didn't have any experience in human resources before you moved to that. Just going back a little bit, did you have any experience in manufacturing before you were on the line?
I had no experience. I had experience in nothing at that point. I was 20 years old, and I drank a lot of beer and things like that. But really no experience at all. I had worked summer jobs at coal mines, and so I understood work, and I had a father and mother who taught me how to, the value of hard work. Mm-hmm. But as far as anything preparing me for work at Toyota, I don't know, having a good upbringing and values maybe. But other than that, no experience really going in. So. And
were you brought on for the startup, or did you come on after they had already been?
They had been going about a year, but it was really part of the startup. They started up with one shift, and they brought me on about the time that they were getting ready to start the second shift. So it's still part of that progression. And they already. It wasn't long after I got there that we actually saw vehicles coming down the line. You have one vehicle that would kind of arch its way through the maze of what is the assembly shop. Yeah. And you would wait for your opportunity to get your 55 seconds. It was probably longer than that then in terms of tack time, but you would see that car coming and you were sweating bullets because you had to, and you had all these leadership people following it and Japanese folks following the car. So it's a little bit nerve wracking, but it was a great way to learn.
And so with the startup with this Georgetown plant, were there Japanese consultants that came over from Toyota?
Yeah, I mean, quite a few. And we had some in our area. Like I said, they were very hands-on. They weren't really, again, teaching you philosophy or anything like that, but they also were teaching you philosophy because they would teach you integrity of the process and quality at the source and making sure you don't let anything get out of what we called L10s, right? Mm-hmm. Your whatever your tack time was, if it was 55 seconds or 1 minute, that's your L10 and that's your space to work. So the idea was you made sure that you completed your process in the right way with good quality, safely in that L10. And if you didn't, you had, as most people know, there's the Andon. And it was made abundantly clear early on, if you have a problem, pull the Andon.
So the stop the line authority to give the people.
And we had thousands of Andon pulls every day. I mean, and we would probably worry more if that went down dramatically. But you were expected to make sure you had quality at the source.
Can you explain that process a little bit about how? So every time did the line shut down, or were there sometimes they pulled the cord and they were able to resolve the issue on the fly?
Yep, great question. So during that L10, if I noticed that there was a problem early in the process, I would pull my Andon. And
what types of problems?
Maybe you noticed that there was a cross-threaded bolt coming toward you, or maybe something wasn't fitting just right, or something was missing, or anything that looked abnormal, or maybe you were trying to get a part in and it wasn't fitting right. You were expected at that point to go ahead and pull your Andon. And what that did was give the team leader the opportunity to come and help you. So the line didn't automatically stop. Now, if the team leader was busy and he or she could not get there in time, by the time it reached the end of the L10, it would stop, which meant not only that process stopping, it meant every process on the line. So, so typically you had a team leader that would come before and pull the Andon off, ask you what's going on, and then they would take responsibility for that. So they would either let it stop and fix it if they needed to, or maybe they could fix it as it was going, but they took full responsibility at that point. Once they decided they were going to release the line, they had taken full responsibility of that defect or that abnormality. So,
and then sometimes it would get escalated up to the group leader.
Yeah, if needed to. And of course, depending on what the issue was, then you have some semblance of problem solving immediately. Okay, what happened? Why did this happen? And a little bit of 5 why on the fly. And if it was something that was not, of course they would correct the issue, make sure quality was good. But if it was something bigger that they really didn't understand what was causing the problem, then it kicks into another level of problem solving that maybe the group leader gets involved in, and they offline they try to figure out and observe to try to figure out what is the root cause of this, so we can eliminate it forever, and so Alan doesn't have to deal with that again. So,
and so this is different from traditional cultures in the fact to whereas if there's a problem, naturally as humans we try to solve it on our own or sweep it under the rug, hope that nobody notices. How were they so successful at getting people like yourself to have the confidence to pull the cord and you're not going to get in trouble for that?
I mean, it's a great question because you're right. A lot of my understanding, I've never worked at like the big three or some of the other automotive companies, but my understanding from talking to people at Toyota who did have experience in those companies is it was you weren't supposed to stop that line, even if you knew there was a problem. We'll handle it out in the yard, you know. But that creates all kinds of other problems. First of all, you don't solve the problem, and you don't highlight it right there at the source of the problem. And then if it's out in the marshalling yard or whatever you call it, you have to take all kinds of things apart to get to that, to get to wherever that defect was. So then you've got a risk of scratches of cars and, you know, putting the car back together, you know, because you're out of standard, right? Mm-hmm. And anytime you're out of standard, your risk of a problem or a defect or an abnormality increases a lot.
Well, we have metrics like rolled throughput yield and different things like that, right? Because it exponentially gets worse, you know, if you don't catch it. And to whereas I think that's been what's so powerful about the Toyota way. And then, you know, where the West, right, that we've created lean thinking based off of these principles, like to whereas it's different, right? And I have to imagine it takes some getting used to train your brain that way. But, you know, what we're trying to do is create smooth flow of value to the customer, right? Mm-hmm. And to whereas, are they paying for defects? Right. You know, are they paying for us having to do all this rework? You know, so fixing it at the source, to me, from my education, has been one of the most things that's resonated with me. To whereas, that's common sense, right? Let's fix it now. But like how I wasn't doing that at the time, and I don't know many people who do. So it's.
Yeah, you know, in my experience of learning the Toyota production system, the Toyota way, hands-on through the coordinators or trainers. When I left Toyota in 2009, I came out and started doing some consulting, and I found that I had to unpack what I had learned and how I had learned it, and it was a little bit of a difficult transition. Mm-hmm. So I had to think through, okay, it was real hands-on. They told me how to do this and what to do, and then I had to start thinking through what's the philosophy so that I can explain it to somebody else. And it's a challenge because people look at, when I first started consulting, it was like, well, of course they're going to do this. This is, like you said, it's common sense. But getting people who have operated in a traditional manufacturing environment to think differently, it's difficult. Mm-hmm. It's risky for them. It's change, and change is hard. No matter where you are or who you are, change. If you came to me and said, "We're going to try a different production system," man, I'd struggle, right? And they struggle sometimes just understanding basic concepts like standardized work or doing it the same way every time or one-piece flow. That's one that's very difficult to help companies understand.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience, you know, as an operator when you were at Toyota with one-piece flow? Because that is a hard thing for a lot of people to understand how that works, because we do, as humans, batch. We do batch processing. We produce as much as we can. So can you explain that a little bit?
Learning it wasn't difficult at all, because I didn't realize they taught us about one-piece flow and what it is, but our lines were set up that what else are you going to do, right? Yeah. So I would say it wasn't real difficult, but as I grew with the company and had to understand the value stream from a wider standpoint, and understanding that in some cases it's not exactly one-piece flow. You know, when you're stamping parts, for example, you don't stamp a door for this car and then change the die and stamp, you know, a hood. Yeah. You it's still a pull system because you're pulling the number, so you'll do 100 hoods or so. So at that point, I was starting to understand what flow meant and how important it was. So.
And I guess the other question is standardized work about, because Toyota does it so well, right? And then, but it is hard, I've seen even from working with companies and people, is to try to get them to come up with the best way to do it and realize that it's not something that should stay that way forever. They should be continuously improving it. So with that, did you have standard work like visuals at the line at that time?
We did, and it sometimes took different forms, and we had different types of standardized work for the purpose. Like we had a job instruction training sheet, which is a type of training standard work. And then in some processes where you had maybe some equipment, you would have what we call a work combination table, which kind of identified the standard and the path and the time for the machine to operate, and then what does the person do?
Yeah,
because that's important, particularly when you have situations. I'm working a lot in Mexico right now with several companies, and I go in and I see some of the processes where if things are running good, the operator doesn't necessarily have much to do, right? It's running, and then they'll stop the line and do a changeover that takes an hour. Yeah. After that part runs completely through. And in the Toyota world, we would look at that like that's waste. I mean, that's tremendous waste. First of all, we got to figure out value-added work and purposeful work for that team member while the line's running. So if you could combine that with, okay, whatever you do during that downtime hour for the changeover, what parts of it can you do while the line's running to reduce that amount of time? So it's so simple. But a lot of companies just view it as, it's changeover. Maybe they could work a little faster, but that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about working faster or doing it quicker. We're talking about eliminating the waste. Okay. And that's the true value of looking at it from that standpoint. So if you could eliminate that hour downtime, that's a lot of money, right? Yeah,
but also how much frustration do you remove for people? Exactly. How much to where is, because most people, right, come to work wanting to do their job and they want to do it well. They don't, but we have to deal with all the headaches, all the stuff that gets in the way of the work. So I
call it walking in circles. If you were paid to come in and just walk in circles all day and make the same money, would you be happy with that? Probably not, right? Eventually you'd be like, I have no purpose in life. Yeah. I'm spending more time here than I am with my family, and you're asking me to walk in circles. And that's what waste is. Waste is walking in circles. It's really, you're putting a team member in a position just to have a wasteful day, and not have as much purpose. So
no, absolutely. And I always love using the Yogi Berra quote. I use it a lot in my training, that you can observe a lot by watching. And exactly. I know we have talked about in past conversations about the Taiichi Ohno circles, where he would have just somewhat, just stand and observe and see what waste you can come that you come up with. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
I can, because my first trip to Japan a lot of years ago, I was a young group leader, and
you've been 5 times.
I've been more than that, but several times to Japan. But the when I went over there, they didn't say we're going to do the Ohno circle. They said, come here, Alan-san, come, and you stand right here and you watch the process, and then be prepared to tell us what you see in terms of waste or problems or improvement ideas. And one thing I just remember, it was May in Japan, and they had the windows open. And I don't know if I've ever been so cold, because I was just standing there. I wasn't working, wasn't moving. They didn't want me to go fix anything, and I was kind of scared to do anything. I wanted to make sure I
Did you get a little anxious?
A little anxious, but I did see a lot. I saw a lot of good things. I saw a lot of bad things. I saw a lot of improvement opportunities. And I saw some things that, I think had they thought it through, maybe would have done it a little bit differently. So, which is the value of fresh eyes. So,
and that's how I feel, like fresh eyes, to where, we're going to expose some waste, but we also want to try, I guess, capitalize on the great things that are being done, because there's so many things that should be shared throughout companies, and sometimes that's a great part of that too. So it's not, we call it like a waste walk or waste observation. It's really just observing the process. And again, we're not judging the people for doing the job, and we tell them that front end. This is not an indictment. You work hard, you do very good work.
Yep.
But how can we make it easier for you to do your job and to make it more fulfilling?
Yep.
And if you do that, right, like you're going to create better products and deliver better services and all that.
Yeah, and that's sometimes a difficult thing with the companies I go into. You talk about culture, for example, and of course Mike talks about culture in his culture book, the heart and soul of the Toyota way. And you go in and it's easy to say what you just said, but getting people to trust and believe that. One thing that I think is truly valuable to do is to make sure you have HR in, and I did HR and manufacturing at Toyota. So getting HR rather at the forefront of what you're doing. And, at Toyota, we called HR the keeper of the values. Now, whether it's HR doing it or some other department, somebody's got to be the keeper of the values. Somebody's got to keep us on track, because you can come up with improvements that make it more cost effective, but what are you doing to the people, right? What's the other side of that? So having HR involved as you're trying to do a lean transformation, I think is critical, or at least have some organization that's thinking that way. To me is critical, because team members need to feel comfortable. And I think Toyota did an excellent job as we were growing up with the company. They did an excellent job of helping us feel comfortable that, okay, we're asking you to shave time off of your process, eliminate the waste, which sometimes meant taking a little bit of rest out of the process, right? You're eliminating walk time.
Or they're standing rather than sitting.
Yeah, you're standing or you're walking, and during that time you're also resting. So team members need to understand that they're not doing that for nothing, right? There's value to them, and in terms of better processes, better purpose. Where we want you to work, but also improve.
Yeah.
So it gives them a more purposeful job, but it also gives them better long-term job security. And we talked a lot about that at Toyota, because imagine what you're asking them to do. If you could eliminate your job, you're going to be,
most places you'd be afraid, like, why would I do that?
And there's companies that would say, if we eliminated a job, we're going to lay one off.
Yeah.
Like Toyota obviously didn't do that. And matter of fact, we were emphatic that you will not lose your job because of Kaizen.
Yeah. Can you explain Kaizen for anybody that...
Yeah, Kaizen is just basically improvement for the good, right? Kaizen.
Because I love it. Like, I love the word. I love
it's the
philosophy.
Greatest thing in the world if you embrace it and get people acting on it every day, because it doesn't have to be huge.
No.
We're not talking about, going out and doing an engineering change, or we're talking about small incremental improvements that if you get everybody doing that every day, it's so powerful. And it, frankly, I think it's one of the biggest reasons Toyota has been so successful. Every quarter, virtually every quarter while I was there, we were having record sales and record profits. So we were doing something right. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that we were always looking for a better way to do it. But we never, said, okay, we eliminated a process over here. Let's lay one person off. We just wouldn't do it.
So what would happen to those people?
A lot of times we would pull people out, and it wouldn't have necessarily be that person, but you would pull somebody out of that group to go to what we called a process improvement team, or at least that's what we called it in the assembly shop.
So they're doing Kaizen, right?
And they come out and do Kaizen, and they go to another group and they help them with the same thing. How can we get rid of waste? How can we get rid of frustration? How do we make your job not only more efficient, but how do we make it safer, less burdensome to you. We looked a lot at burden on the team member because, let's face it, building cars is not an easy thing to do. It's hard on your body, and every automotive company has dealt with, how do we reduce the risk of cumulative trauma, injuries, and things like that. So you had to balance it a little bit. Yeah. But and we did that. Did a lot of ergonomic, improvements, and had a lot of focus on safety and ergonomics. But pulling those people out served a couple of different purposes. One was it took them out of the production area. So we don't have extra out there. So everybody's operating per standard. And then that person gets pulled out, and they get to learn how to look at processes that maybe they haven't worked on. And it teaches them new skills. And a lot of times those people were your next team leaders or group leaders or, next opportunities for promotion. So
you mentioned HR being an integral, part of the lean transformation or with the Toyota production system. I'm wondering, how does that align with the behaviors you're looking for everyone in the organization? And, without having a leading question, I just want to talk about the improvement system, that suggestion system that they had at the Georgetown plant, because it's been cited time and time again as such a great example. And it's something a lot of companies, I know members of Lean Jacks and like anybody trying to undergo a lean transformation wants to see how they can get the people engaged. So can you talk a little bit about that and how HR can reinforce those behaviors?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, to me, it was very interesting how Toyota set out to implement the Kaizen system or suggestion system. And a lot of people know Steve Answini, who, Steve was kind of the architect. Him and I think Tom Adair helped with that some. And, it was tremendously successful, but it was interesting. And I was the bumper guy, remember? Yeah. So I'm at the bottom end of this, or maybe the top end, depending on how you look at it. But so I had Christmases based on Kaizen money. Yeah. And the thing is, it was really structured to try to find those small incremental improvements. And I did a lot of them. I really did, because I was always looking. And that was the intent. It wasn't, let's get people tuned into looking at, these variations, or let's get them looking at engineering, timing. And no, how can we make your process just a little bit better? And that's what they ask us to do. And they said, we've got a system that's not going to pay you $1 million, but, if you eliminate a second off your process, you're going to get some money. And if you just maybe move something closer to the point of use, so you don't have to walk to it, here's $10, and it wasn't big money, but it wasn't big improvements. But if you get everybody doing that, you change the way they think, for one thing, and that's the true value, and that's where Steve Answini and the folks who were the architect of that, I think it was brilliant, because we're not going to necessarily question. We're going to leave it at the group level to approve, because we didn't want a big bureaucratic system to where it goes into a pile and you have to wait. No, let's handle it right here.
Like that's closed.
I would think, okay, I'm going to move that flow rack 4 feet this way, and it'll eliminate me from having to walk. Group leader, do you think that's a good idea? Oh yeah, heck yeah, why not? Write it up. I'd write it up, and I'd get paid quickly. So it was an excellent system,
because the implementation rate was so high.
Yeah, right? I mean, so high in terms of how many people were involved, and I couldn't tell you the numbers back then, but most people were doing it. For one thing, it was extra Christmas money, or whatever. So,
but it doesn't necessarily have to be what they call Kaizen Blitz or rapid improvement events, where it's 4 or 5 days and you're focused. Which there are benefits to that, but from what you're saying, it sounds like it's a lot of just small improvements, incremental to but like if you have everyone doing that, you're going to get so much better.
Right. Exactly. And that's the idea. And, it was early on, so they wanted to teach people the value of doing it in your group, in your process, making it safer, better quality, just a better process, easier. How do you make your job easier? Mm-hmm. And here, I'll give you $10 to do that. So it was awesome.
When people are servicing improvements, from your experience, what is their currency? Meaning, I know you're saying like, oh, you get $10 or you get something here, but what is most important to the people from your experience?
I would say more. This is. I don't know that there is an answer to this question because, I've been in HR a lot at different companies, and we always ask that question: should we go to one of these service industry models where there's a catalog, and if you get so many points, you can get a knife, or you can get mm-hmm. binocular, whatever, or do you do just a straight gift card? Mm-hmm. I know at one point, I think it was at first at Toyota, there was this store called Service Merchandise. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got Service Merchandise gift certificate, and that's if my only hope and prayer was that my kids liked the things from Service Merchandise, because if not, they're out of luck, because that's where we're getting Christmas. Sorry.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your consulting work. So you have so much experience at Toyota and so many different roles, and to where you said like there's challenges unpacking that. So if you don't mind talking about some of the work you've done since 2009, since you've had Parsley Consultants up and running.
Well, I've done a lot of learning, and it's maybe what I like about my job most is, I learn every day and every week. And I get a lot of times, like doing a big project down in Mexico with several different companies, and working with Mike Oseas and several other consultants that I'm learning from every day. Mm-hmm. And I mean, tremendous people that are teaching me, and hopefully I'm teaching them a few things, and we learn from each other as we go. So that first of all, I'm learning a lot, and that's I never want to. If I ever get to where I don't want to learn anymore, I probably will hang it up. That's not for a while, I hope. So, but in Mexico, for example, a lot of the focus of the things I'm doing with these companies is implementing a group leader and a team leader role at those companies. And then the other part of what I'm doing across all these different companies, which are associated companies, mm-hmm. Is looking at ways to commonize policies and procedures from an HR standpoint. Mm-hmm. Most of the companies have almost a standalone HR thinking way.
They have their own culture.
Yeah. So we're trying to figure out across all those companies, looking horizontally, what are the things that are best practices? What are the things that we should standardize? Mm-hmm. What are things that we shouldn't? Right? I mean, everything doesn't have to be standardized across all these different companies, because the companies are different. I work with a conglomerate of companies that range from power distribution unit manufacturing, like insulators and that kind of thing, to making pizzas, or making potato chips. So it's a lot of diversity. So everything's not going to be exactly the same. So it's finding that middle ground, and the approach that we've taken, which I think has really helped, is bringing representatives from each of those companies, from operations to HR to continuous improvement groups.
So cross-functional.
Cross-functional, bring them together and talk about, number one, introduce the Toyota standard mm-hmm. as a model, and then look at their current situation at each company. What do you currently do? Mm-hmm. What is your team leader, group leader, supervisor, whatever? program look like?
And does this involve value stream mapping or process mapping? Do you incorporate that then?
A little bit, but we haven't done much of that yet.
It's fact finding.
Right. More fact finding. What are your processes? What are your standards? How do you approach it? What are your ratios of supervisor to operator? Those kind of things, and just letting them explore it, and help them understand what their current condition is, and then compare it to that Toyota model, and then try to close the gap.
Yeah.
So because the direction is we need to get closer to the Toyota model. And these are companies that have been doing this for a long time, and so they have good systems, and they have good programs, and they've got great people. So it's easy to see the gap because they do have some standards.
But a lot of that, and then you create a new gap, right?
Yeah,
like you close
absolutely.
that, and like I always use an example towards it's like the kids in the car when you're doing lean and the Toyota production system. Like, are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Exactly.
No, and we're never going to get there. We're striving for perfection or excellence, and but we're going to celebrate along the way.
That's right.
And
a lot of people struggle with that. It's Kaizen and Toyota production system is not. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's never easy. And it's like you said,
everybody would do it.
Everybody would do it. And I wish people understood the values of it. And if they did as much as I do, they would do it too. They would want this.
I'm sure you've had this to whereas I'll be talking to people, oh, what do you do? And I'll be explaining it to whereas we're, trying to create a culture of continuous improvement while showing respect for people so we can deliver exceptional value to the customers and get rid of headaches. And then I always know that it's resonating when they're like, why doesn't every company do that?
Right.
And I think like we answer that question. It's not easy. It's not easy. And that's why, there's so few places that reach that Toyota level, but at the same time, to where you're going to get so much value incorporating this.
Yeah, I mean, even problem solving, which is another thing that I've spent a lot of time, helping current clients with, is, there's no magic to the Toyota problem solving methodology.
They took it from, Deming and
exactly. And it's a good system, and it forces you to think in a certain way, which I think is the value that Toyota's put on it. But it is essentially, what's your standard? What do you want to happen? What is actually happening? What's happening right now? Yeah. What's the gap?
Yeah.
And what's causing the gap? So it's really that simple. And Toyota has a good method to help you through that, particularly if it's a problem that the answer is not clear, right? You really have to dig down. It's a bigger problem with a lot of data.
More complex root cause analysis.
Yes.
Because I know you've experienced this too, and we all do this, to where our favorite sport is jumping to solutions, and to where sometimes we know we don't, the root cause is just like, we were talking about this the other day, right? To where it's like, why do you do it this way? Well, we've always done it this way. Okay, root cause, we're done. Like, exactly. Let's go put some countermeasures in for this. But
or what's the standard? Oh, we really don't have one. Okay, then you don't have a problem, right? Just create a standard.
There's been so many times I've been a facilitator, and we have standard work, we have it, and then we come to the end of it like, no, we don't have it, or there's variation in it. So it's just like sometimes there's that, but then there's other times like it takes more time, right?
Right, exactly.
So can you talk a little bit about what was it, the 8D system of problem solving? I mean, you essentially explained it, but
the Toyota.
Yeah.
Well, what we learned early on was just kind of practical problem solving. We would start with some kind of problem statement, and then we would use a fishbone to kind of break it down, and then the focus was on the 5 whys. How do we get to root cause, and then coming up with a countermeasure for that root cause. And with the Toyota Way 2001 kind of retooling or rethinking. We
recommend that book, and then the most recent edition, I think, from 2020.
Yes, and we recognized we needed to be a little more implicit with how we explain to our organizations, because Toyota was still growing and still is, had to be more implicit about what's the method. Yeah. For example, the Toyota business practices, which is TBP, which is what Toyota uses. It's their 8-step problem solving.
Yeah.
So originally we didn't have a step in there that was designed to break the problem down. Mm-hmm. So we were taking big problems and kind of a little bit break down with a fishbone, mm-hmm. but we're still looking at that big problem. So we added in with the TBP a step where we're really breaking down the problem to a smaller subset of that problem. And what that allows you to do is to solve a problem that's not so complex, like taking world hunger and saying, okay, how do we solve world hunger? Well, let's break it down to this village first, and let's solve it there.
Or this street.
And it might give you the answer, right? If it gives you the answer, then you yoke it in, or you share it with the other villages, and eventually, you get closer to eliminating the hunger. So that's what it's designed to do. And to me, it's a great method. It takes a little bit of discipline to follow it. And some people get frustrated with that discipline, but once you do, I remember when I first learned the TBP, mm-hmm. Toyota Business Practices with the 8 steps, the breakdown was really hard for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, I want to do what I did before.
Yeah.
But now,
discipline.
And I failed miserably. Yeah. It was terrible. I just didn't understand it. You're supposed to ask what, when, where, but not why. Mm-hmm. So people inherently want to jump to why. Mm-hmm. No, they would just want you to break it down to a smaller subset. So I struggled with it, but now I can't imagine going into a bigger problem without using that and using that breakdown.
And that's what I've incorporated into the A3, the 11 by 17 sheet of paper, which is not about the paper. It's about distilling your thoughts and getting the facts and having some visuals so you can present it and anybody be able to understand it.
Right.
And to whereas I think with problem solving, like Toyota didn't reinvent the wheel, or anything like that. Like they took it's like what I believe Henry Ford said, to whereas I just take what the last man, brought.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I think it was Thomas Edison. I should be looking at my notes, but with that, but to where so structured problem solving seems. It sounds like to where that was a revelation to you, to where it's really helped, and that now you're instilling that with people.
It has, and I'll say this. We learned from the Japanese, and mm-hmm. Before the 2001 retooling, it was largely word of mouth. The Japanese didn't document a lot in terms of here's how you train somebody, mm-hmm. but they were training us, and they knew what they were doing. Some of the best A3s I've seen were in the back of a warehouse on a cardboard box where a Japanese coordinator is kind of showing you how to think through this problem. Mm-hmm. And it didn't look like an A3 at all, but it was all in there, the thinking and getting to the root cause. So,
and that I understand for transactional processes and virtual work, it's difficult not to just put it in an Excel spreadsheet, but it's just trying to, if you can get people together, right? And just having sticky notes and having that, and then you can recreate that on some of these great virtual systems we have. But to me, I agree, those are the best A3s I've seen, to where it's active. So we only have a few minutes left, and I wanted to ask just what are the things you see with companies trying to go on a lean transformation? And I know we've used the Toyota production system, and I know some people might disagree, but to me, it's the same. And to whereas we're trying to get to that standard, the Toyota production system, and that's what lean thinking is. For companies that are considering starting a lean transformation, or they want to accelerate their gains, do you have any recommendations for leadership?
Yeah, you have to understand what your purpose is first. As a company, as a leader in the company, what do you really want? Because the answer to that should dictate where you go next. Mm-hmm. And if you really want, if you just want to be, you want to do implement a lean system, you got to go deeper than that, and you got to figure out, why do I want this? Is it because it's a good marketing thing, or do I really believe in continuous improvement, pushing problem solving all the way to the operator level? Do I really believe that? Because that's where the work comes in, and that's why it's hard. You can't just say, "Oh, we're going to implement it," and it's magic. So you have to understand where what your purpose is, where you want to go, and then you have to get somebody to help you. And that's not a plug to do consulting. I've got plenty of work, but it gets somebody to help. I think is very important. Whether it's a consultant or whether it's your buddy that operates in a lean, get somebody to help come.
Outside set of eyes.
Outside fresh eyes, exactly. And it's not a plug for the Lean Jacks, but
you can plug.
It's okay. To me, it's a great affordable way to get help and to get fresh eyes. Because one thing I've noticed through all of my consulting over all these years is companies have the same problems. They may look a little differently at this company versus this, but they're dealing with a lot of the same problems. So getting people from other companies to come in, like, for example, through Lean Jacks, it's a great way to get fresh eyes from somebody that, they don't have an agenda other than looking and seeing how they can help you improve. That's their only objective.
So what I find really powerful about it, and I got a lot of my start in lean consulting working in design, build, construction, which I knew nothing about coming in, but it was funny like how people would pull me aside afterwards. You know what? No one has asked that question since I've been here, and it's been a long-standing problem. Yep. And it's just like, because I don't understand like the engineering and all the bits of it, but I can understand like, why is it taking so long? Why is there so much rework in this process?
Why do you do that way?
Yeah. And it's not even judgmental sometimes. It's just like, I want to learn, because that's the thing to where I think so powerful about lean thinking is how I've never met anyone that wasn't someone who said like, I'm a learner. Like, I'm never going to get there. And that's okay to say you have expertise. Right. There's nothing wrong with that, but just realize to where you can always get better. And I think like from what I've seen to the problem solving, what problem are companies trying to solve? And then you're going to realize people, as you said, have a very similar problem, or they might have come up with great solutions already.
Yep.
So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So.
Yep. Yeah, in a lot of cases you find that they have come up with solutions. They just didn't maintain it. Yeah. They didn't create a standard and
so I guess that can be kind of the final question before we wrap up. What recommendations do you have for companies to sustain improvements? Because I've had experience where I don't know if I've ever had experience where we did a Kaizen where people weren't on a high like afterwards but it's just entropy is natural. So
It is natural, and understanding that I think is important. You have to, this is where you need some help too as a company, is to make sure your management systems are supporting the improvements, and make sure your management systems, whether it's a floor management and development system or just a visual management system that's monitoring what are the KPIs, what are the process indicators. We made this improvement. Let's put a process indicator that makes sure we're continue to get the right results, or to make sure we continue to do that countermeasure for extended period of time. Yeah. That way, and then you've got a management system, which includes managers who will follow up and still show interest and say, "Oh, it looks like you're not doing that countermeasure like we said. Why?"
Yeah, but respectfully, right?
Always respectfully.
A lot of times there's a very
maybe a good reason, or maybe they just didn't feel like it and they stopped. But either way, you monitor the impact of that, and that's where your management team is so valuable to go out, get to the Gemba, go see, and interact with your team. And you're there to support them, because if there's a reason why they're not doing something, maybe it's something you can help with. So,
and that's part of Gemba Walks for Leadership, right? How can they help? How
Right.
can they help remove barriers? What are the barriers and how can they help? It's not just like, why aren't you doing this?
Right.
And it shouldn't be an information session either. It should be something where you're identifying problems and then you're going to either something that can be solved right then, or, you set up to where you're going to have more structured problem solving.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of quick PDCA or Plan, Do, Check, Act. Mm-hmm. It's doing that over and over, just in normal conversation. Not let's go to the board and do a PDCA.
Yeah.
So what's happening? Why are you doing that? What problems are you having? What gaps? What's your standardized work say? Just.
Do you have any recommendations for leaders conducting Gemba Walks to make them effective?
Kind of understand PDCA and what questions might help you lead to.
Yeah.
You can call it kata or whatever,
or the Socratic method.
Yeah,
open-ended.
but always thinking in terms of gap analysis is what I do. I don't know if there's a perfect answer, but I know in my mind, when I go out to the floor, I want to kind of check, okay, I know this is a standard. What's really happening? Are we really doing that?
What's actual, and then what's what's actually happening versus what the target is.
Yeah, and then what's the gap, and then why are we experiencing that gap? Because let's face it, particularly at a team leader or group leader role, it's a hard job. I've done both of them, and it is not easy. You can't keep up with everything. It's seemingly. Yeah. So having a leader, an assistant manager, or a chief, or whatever you want to call them, or a manager coming by, it kind of helps you correlate what's important. Well, that standard's important.
Yeah.
That's why I noticed you're not doing it, right?
Yeah,
So but if it's not important, let's not do it, right? I mean, if you've stopped doing something and you're having no impact, maybe we don't need to do that. But let's do it in a manner where we keep the standard until we change it.
Okay.
Yeah. With the idea of we hope every standard changes because we want improvement, right? So.
Okay. Is there anything you want to leave people with today?
Only that if like I said earlier, if you're looking at doing some lean transformation, or you want, we pretty much want to focus on companies that are doing a full transformation, because doing a little bit of lean is okay, and you can make some improvements, but you're not going to change your culture.
Yeah. How are they committed?
Are they committed? And are you going to try to do it across the whole company? And the other thing is, don't forget about your transactional processes.
Yes,
because there's my opinion, there's more waste in your transactional processes.
I think we could we will do an additional interview on that topic.
I think that's good.
I think that
topic
would resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah.
But Alan, thank you so much for being part of this and to kicking this off. The plan is to get people from the First Coast and beyond. I've had other people reaching out that want to be a part of this and have discussions and share their knowledge with as many people as they can that are serious about, living the principles of the Toyota way and lean thinking. So on behalf of Lean Jacks, thanks for listening and watching as we have the video. And Alan, thanks for your time. This has been so much fun.
Thanks for the invitation. I do appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.